Good afternoon, everyone. This is Attorney Stephen Sabro. You're listening to Law Talk on 1480 WSAR. We do this show every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m., and it's your opportunity to call in with any law or related questions. Our call-in number, of course, is 508-673-1480.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Listen, supposing I'm a tenant and I have a dog, right? Mm-hmm. And my dog bites somebody, is the landlord responsible in any way?
Well, the key part of your question was in any way. In general, no. Now, there are exceptions to that. So, if, for example, the dog has been there for a considerable period of time, and the dog has shown what's called dangerous propensities, maybe the dog has bitten someone already, then in that case, the landlord may be responsible. Now, you have to prove in that situation, if the landlord is not the owner of the dog or is not the keeper of the dog, you have to prove negligence. So you'd have to prove that the landlord knew about this dog for a considerable period of time, knew the dog was vicious, and didn't do anything about it. It's a much tougher case against the landlord, and it's a very good question, because the problem is that you do have sometimes tenants that own a pit bull, for example, and I know people don't want to pick on a particular breed, but as an example, a pit bull that bites someone, and the tenant doesn't have any insurance, and now what does the injured party do? Well, sometimes you try to go after the landlord. It's not that easy a case. It's possible, but it's just not that easy a case.
Mm-hmm. No, because we had a neighbor that had a lab, and the lab bit the mailman. Yeah. Right? And the people refused to deliver mail until the dog was removed from the property.
Well, that's a separate rule with the post office, but that doesn't make the landlord liable to the mailman for the injury. It could, depending on the circumstances, but the post office has their own rules, just like if you don't shovel your walkway and all that, they can refuse to deliver mail. So, but it's a more difficult case against the landlord. Sometimes, if the landlord and the tenant are related, then I've had a case where I represented a police officer that was bitten by a dog, and we brought claims against both the tenant and the landlord because there was a question about whether the landlord was in fact the keeper of the dog. Did the landlord, for example, feed the dog, take the dog for walks, take the dog outside, put it on a leash, that type of thing. So there's possibilities there, but it's much more difficult case against the landlord.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for the call. All right, again, our number 508-673-1480, and that's the traditional and question, or the tough question, is when you have a situation where the tenant owns the dog, the tenant doesn't have insurance, and you have someone that's injured, and they come into my office, and now the issue is, well, the tenant doesn't own anything. We could file a suit against the tenant, but what good is it? And then can the landlord be responsible? And like I said to the caller, it's a much more difficult case to prove. You'd have to prove negligence against the landlord, which is not easy, but not impossible either. I believe at one point in time there was discussion in Fall River about requiring owners of dogs to actually, I think owners of certain types of dogs to have insurance, but I think that never went through. I think there are some communities throughout the country that require that, and I think they require it for particular breeds. Some people would think that's a good idea, some people don't, but I think there was some discussion about that. Usually follows some incident where a child is mauled, and then those kind of discussions take place. So they come up periodically. But the issues with regard to protection, if you're the dog owner, the way to protect yourself is, again, by insurance, and also by, if you own property, especially if it's your principal residence, you can put a homestead on your property, which protects that piece of property as well. So that's the other line of defense, insurance and a declaration of homestead, but declaration of homestead only applies to your principal residence. Cool. We're just about at the end of time. Let me tell you how to reach me at the office. The phone number is 508-674-0890. Again, 508-674-0890. That's at my office. What I do mostly is personal injury cases, workers' compensation, and criminal defense, which involves, the personal injury cases involve car accidents, injuries at construction sites, injuries on someone else's property, that type of thing. Injuries at work are pretty obvious. That's what workers' compensation is. And criminal defense, of course, we know what that is. We also do probate of estates, wills, those types of things. Attorney Aspman's been with me a long time. He handles our cases in Rhode Island and our real estate and domestic relations. Our office is in Somerset at 1026 County Street in Somerset. But on Tuesdays, I'm here from 1 to 2 p.m., so save up your calls for next week. And again, my name is Attorney Stephen Sabra. You've been listening to Law Talk on 1480 WSAR.